Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. Daylight savings time really screwed me over because this is supposed to be Big Ten after dark, and if you look at my window back here, it's not entirely dark yet. So, basketball season, this is what happened. It's March, everything's crazy, but thankfully, I have Frank, the stat tank from the Boiler Express, here to talk about it with me. Frank, how you doing tonight?
Oh, doing well, and equally as much, the time change is definitely messing with me. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought it was funny when I saw Big Ten after dark, and yeah, it dusk is even isn't even the right word, but no, happy to be here, happy to talk about some ball. We had the Big Ten tournament bracket, and yeah, should be a good time.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we're going to get to it all. We have kind of a little bit of a summary recap. We're not going to go game by game of the games that happened today. Obviously, Michigan State winning the brawl. We'll talk about that a little bit. Iowa gets the win over Nebraska. If there is a bid stealer for the Big Ten tournament, I guess that's your bid stealer because, it looked like Nebraska was in it for the NCAA tournament, and then they lose their last two games, and they're not even in the Big Ten tournament at this point. Minnesota and Rutgers go to overtime. That was pretty crazy game. Two teams really fighting hard, really fighting it out. It was cool to see. And then finally, Oregon takes care of Washington as they should. It's March, so anytime you can just take care of a game and do what you're supposed to do, we'll take that. And then on the flip side, we are going to look at the Big Ten tournament bracket. Frank and I are going to fill out a bracket for it together. Doesn't mean it's our bracket. Doesn't mean that we're going to post it and say this is my bracket afterward. But this is Jr. and Frank's bracket together that we'll be filling out. So let's talk about the games first. Frank, we had Michigan State beating Michigan 79-62. Iowa defeats Nebraska 83-68. Rutgers wins on their senior night 75-67, and then Oregon wins 80-73. Let's save the brawl stuff for maybe after we talk about the games. Let's just talk some basketball first.
Yeah.
What kind of stuck out to you today? Obviously, Iowa getting into the Big Ten tournament is a big story, but Michigan State defeating Michigan by the margin they did was surprising to me. I thought it would at least be a close game. It never really was close. So, what were your thoughts here, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was the biggest thing, even more so than the brawl, which I'm sure we'll touch on, was the margin of victory and the fact that Michigan State did kind of get out to that early lead and never really let Michigan even get their hopes up. To be honest, the
Mm-hmm.
Breslin Center is a hard place to win, obviously, especially on senior night. But I realistically didn't expect that. I thought it would just be a closer game. Anytime you have that rivalry game, which maybe Michigan State's more of a basketball rivalry than Michigan Ohio State, you can probably attest to that a little bit more. But yeah, the margin of victory and the extent to which Michigan State just kind of dominated that game from beginning to end, to me, was the most surprising thing of the day. I mean, just looking at those, I love the win probability charts. I mean, it hits 99% for Michigan State before halftime. So, you know, take away from that what you will, but I to me, that's the biggest story of the day.
Yeah, there's a neat thing that they do on the Real app. It's like the momentum chart. It kind of
Hmm.
looks like that like leading score, and I mean really at no point in time did Michigan have the momentum in that game. So I mean just really from beginning to end, I think there was at one point in the first half where Michigan kind of peaked up just a little bit in it, but overall, I mean from beginning to end, this was a game that Michigan State just kind of flat out dominated. Michigan didn't really have an answer for them. They turned the ball over 11 times in the first half. They weren't hitting their threes. I think a lot of that is being attributed to Sam Walters. I don't know if a guy coming off the bench that plays the minutes that he does help with spacing when he's out there because he's a good 3-point shooter. But to me, he doesn't play enough to warrant this idea of like, oh, our 3-point shooting will just magically get better when Sam Walters is in there. So I don't know. We had people saying Michigan could have been fraudulent after the Illinois loss. I was skeptical to say fraudulent because I still think you win that many close games, you have to be a good team. But I just think their efficiency is way down, and you can't make up for all those turnovers if you're not efficient on the offensive end. Am I crazy here?
No, you're absolutely not crazy here. I mean, I think it's equally surprising to see Michigan go 3 for 24 from three as it is to see Michigan State take 24 threes in a game. Because throughout this season, they're not shooting threes and they're winning games doing it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You can't come out, turn the ball over, shoot 3 for 24 from three, and expect to win on the road in the Big Ten. That's going to cost you a lot of games, and there is a lot of variance when we've seen from this Michigan team. I mean, when they're hot, but when they're cold, they can be really cold. So that's that's one thing I look at. When teams going into March is how consistent are they offensively, and can you win games when shots aren't falling? And we've seen a little bit of that from Michigan. They've had some grinders where they haven't shot the ball well. They won against some lesser competition, but yeah, that's definitely not the recipe to go into the Breslin Center and win.
Yeah, we saw it against that Nebraska team in that game. I think it was like 49-46 or something. Didn't even reach 50 points in that game. And I came away from that saying, okay, as long as Michigan doesn't keep doing this, like I feel good about this Michigan team because they just want to grind it out defensive game. The problem is they kept doing it. Like they kept
Yeah.
having those kind of offensive performances. And then on the flip side for Nebraska, our friend Penn State fan Drew Allerseason's pointing out, on the flip side, Nebraska, I mean, at one point, like 3 weeks ago, they had, I don't know if it was 99% chance. I think the highest I ever saw ESPN had them was like 91% or something, but still in the 90% chance about 3 weeks ago. They just completely, plummeted since then. They lost that game to Michigan. They lost that game to what was it? I keep getting it mixed up. Either Penn State or Minnesota. I think it was Minnesota. They lose.
They lost to both Penn State and
Oh, they lost them both.
down
There
the
we go.
stretch. Yeah, yeah,
They lost to Ohio State in that double overtime game where, I mean, Ohio State won the game, but Bryce Williams missed that free throw at the end of the game that probably would have won it for him. So, like this is a team in Nebraska that just really never found their momentum down the stretch. I question why it was happening, why that was kind of going on, because you had the best player on the court in multiple different games, and you still weren't able to get it done. It's just very interesting to me. We'll see what Iowa can do in the Big Ten tournament, but I think the bigger story out of this is just Nebraska and their kind of fall from fate.
yeah. Absolutely, and obviously, if you can't tell, I mean, I'm a big Purdue fan. My world's very Purdue centric, but I remember when Purdue, up not upset, but beat Nebraska very handedly at Mackey, and thinking like this could be a quad one game for Purdue
Mhm.
at the end of the season. I mean, Nebraska was that hot coming into that game with only losses to Iowa, Michigan State, and St. Mary's, none of which are bad losses, and beating Indiana, beating UCLA. They were, I think, top 30 in KenPom at that time, and just thinking this could be a quad one game by the end of the season, and then just plummet right after that. Purdue seems to break one team every season. I guess this year it was Nebraska. Last year it was, or 2 years ago it was Ohio State. They kind of broke Ohio State, but yeah, they rattled off 6 losses in a row, and then beat Illinois, beat Oregon on the road, which is really impressive, and then just plummet at the end of the season. Which it's the Big Ten. There are no easy games, but I don't think. I mean, if you would have asked me this mid-January, does Nebraska miss the Big Ten tournament? I would have said there's no way, absolutely no way. So
Yeah.
that's just a shock. I mean, there's no better word for it.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, this was a team that looked like they were gonna for sure make it. Like you said, mid-January, the way things were going. Another team, I mean, we won't have to talk about them much, but you brought up, a team that just was an absolute shock from the beginning. Penn State, like Penn State, they beat Purdue. They looked like they were a really solid put together team, and then they struggle with injuries. And even just last episode, we had not last episode, 2 episodes ago, we had people questioning if Mike Rhodes was on the hot seat. And then what does Mike Rhodes do? He goes out, he gets that win against Wisconsin, and it's like, hey, let's give him a break for some of the injuries he's had, but you still got guys that are playing hard and they're still working together. Speaking of two teams that played hard today, Minnesota, Rutgers, I mean, just fantastic game between those two. Really fun to watch the effort, everything going on. I like this Minnesota team. I know that they're not going to, make much national noise or anything like that, but they've had some big wins this year. They've also had some clunkers as well, games they should have won. And then this Rutgers team, like, it's just kind of crazy. Like when Rutgers is playing confident and when they're playing, aggressive basketball, they're really, really good. But the minute they lose that confidence, the minute their kind of role players start falling apart, it's just like you really have nothing else there. And Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper can't do it all on their own. I mean, they're really good players. They're lottery picks for a reason, but they can't do it all on their own.
I mean, Ace Bailey only had 6 points. Was what,
Hmm.
3 for 11 from the floor today. That's just not a winning recipe for this Rutgers team.
Hmm.
With as talented as he is, I mean, it's basketball. Shots don't go in. In fact, they and more often than not don't go in. But it just that's not a recipe that's going to get you a win, unfortunately. And I think going forward, I'd like to see Rutgers kind of get back to their defense, kind of scrappiness kind of ways. I think it's fair to say I don't think Rutgers fans would disagree. This has been kind of a disappointing season for them. But to really to see them pull out this win here at the end of the season was pretty impressive for me.
Yeah, especially only scoring 23 points there in the second half. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not impressive, but you had the defense to to hold Minnesota only 32 there, get into overtime and just take it away in overtime. So impressive there. And Philip's right. That was exactly where I was going next. Right before we'll get to the brawl here in just a second. Biddle was a beast today, just an absolute beast. I need to pull up his numbers overall just to make sure that I give him justice here. Nate Biddle today, nearly 40 minutes. He had 36 points, 12 rebounds. He did have 4 fouls, but 2 blocks in this game, two assists. I mean, Nate Biddle is the engine that drives this Oregon team, right? I mean, if he is on, it's very, very hard for anybody to beat Oregon, even when Shellstad isn't maybe having the best game. What to me, what has been so great for them is that you've gotten contributions not just from Shellstad, who only gave you 4 points today, but you're getting Bartholomew, you're getting Bamba, who's giving you good defense on one end, and he's also being an offensive threat on the other end. It really feels like this Oregon team is it's kind of the recipe of what Dana Altman has been, which is maybe we go through a little bit of a slump during the year, but by the end of it, Dana Altman's going to have his guys right, and they're going to be playing really good basketball in March more often than not.
yeah. And Big Ten fans are learning, but he's maybe not to the level of Izzo, but on his way in terms of being, maybe the successor to the Mr. March title. But yeah, Nate Biddle was on fire today. 13 for 20 from the floor, three for 4 from three, I think is probably the more impressive thing. 7 for 8 at the line. I mean, yeah, the 4 fouls, but I mean, that's not a huge thing. But really, in the last 10 minutes of that game, I think holding Washington to only 5 points was what sealed that win. Because it was a close game with about 10 minutes to go, and then just really locking in defensively. Again, Dana Altman in March, it's what you expect at this point. So I'm really excited to see what this Oregon team does in the postseason. They have a really unique makeup, right? They have the 7-footer who at times looks like the guy that the offense is going to flow through. Right, Shellstad's really coming on here, especially the second half of the season. He's a guy that you can see dropping 30 in a March Madness game. So I'm really, really excited to see what happens with this team going forward. I mean, and they took care of a team today in Washington that they should have, and it's always good from a confidence standpoint to go and win a game that you feel you should for your last game.
For sure, for sure. All right, really fast before we get to the bracket, we'll hit a commercial and then we'll get to the bracket stuff. Michigan State today. I'm gonna do my best to describe the situation. I can't play a video of it because it was on a broadcast. I do that, this video is gonna get taken down off of YouTube and stuff. So I'm gonna do my best to describe it. And Frank, if I leave anything out, please feel free to correct me on it. But essentially, Michigan State is shooting free throws, and as Michigan State does at the end of the game, they start subbing out their seniors, right? And so Frankie Fiddle was the first one. He goes over and he kisses the Michigan State logo. Doesn't really kiss the center of it. That's normally what they do because there are a couple Michigan players standing there, but it didn't really seem to be an issue. He just kind of kissed it and moved on. You saw Jaden Akins, and the other one that was down there wasn't Trey Holloman. There was another one that was down there, kind of like motion to the Michigan players. I don't think they were screaming at him, but kind of motion to him like, hey, can you move to the side? Or I don't know if they were that polite. We'll see. But yeah, they kind of were like, "Hey, move to the side," and the Michigan players just stood there. Well, came time for Trey Holloman, I think, to sub out, and when he went to go sub out, he was kissing that Spartan in the middle of it all. He wasn't settling for the top of the hat or anything like that. So he goes over, he goes and tries to get him to move. I guess. I don't know what he said to him exactly. They take offense. The Michigan player, I think it was Brooks, is the one that pushed Trey Holloman. Trey Holloman kind of reacts right away. Hard to see who pushed who first. I think it was probably the Michigan player, but I've also seen people arguing about it. So, but not I guess not a brawl, but a fighting of words and players being having to be held back ensues. Overall, you get Dusty May saying at the end, oh, we can't stand on the logo during free throws, I guess. And you have Michigan State saying like, nobody's gonna disrespect our traditions and all this stuff. I'm not asking you to pick a side here, Frank, but just what's your thoughts here on the situation?
My thoughts here are this is what makes college basketball so great,
Hmm.
right? It's the hatred. I'm not gonna say hatred, but the dislike of your rivals. Like it goes deep, right? And so, do I think the Michigan players were purposely impeding the Michigan State players' ability to kiss their logo? Absolutely. Now, I do think Dusty May was being kind of silly because if you're going to do something like that, just step up and own it. Just step up and say, "Oh yeah, yeah, man." Like I'm not going to think any less of Dusty May. It's college basketball, or just say like, I didn't have anything to do with that. It was the player's decision, but don't act like you weren't doing anything. But I just think, I mean, it's college. It's 20, 21-year-old guys being 20, 21-year-old guys. And, this is a rivalry game. It's senior night. And yeah, there was probably some emotions running. Obviously the Michigan players didn't expect to get beat so badly and just, wanted to stir up something. It happens. It happens in sports. And as long as they didn't escalate it beyond what it was, I don't have a problem with it. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, they didn't need pepper spray like there was in the Ohio State Michigan
True.
brawl there at the center of the field. So hats off that there didn't have to be pepper spray in this one. Yeah, I'm with you. Like as far as I'm concerned, if you do something like that, okay, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Brooks and who was it? It was Kaysen. Maybe they had no idea. Freshmen just maybe lost in the moment. I tend to believe that's not the case. Michigan State never lined up their guards on a free throw like that before. They were looking and saw Frankie Fiddler, kiss the Spartan. Like Spartan players were telling them to move. Like I don't think you just are that oblivious. I also don't think that you go to Michigan and don't know anything about the rivalry. Like it's possible Dusty May doesn't know anything about it, but he also was at Indiana when they played Michigan State, and he coached at Eastern Michigan, I'm pretty sure as well. So like he's been in that state. Maybe he forgot, but probably not. Like as far as I'm concerned, like if you're gonna do something like this, and I know it wasn't the players that said it, it was Dusty May. Maybe the players would have owned it, but I'm with you. Just own it. Like if you're gonna be the bad guy, just be the bad guy. Own it.
Absolutely.
Give yourself a little bit of that extra fire in the rivalry. That was kind of what I hated most from maybe not hated, but disliked the most from the reaction by some of the fans and Dusty May. It was like, well, I guess we just can't stand there. And it's like, dude, just own it. Like I had a guy I was texting with, he's a Michigan fan. After it all happened, and I was like, "Man, what do you think about this?" And he was like, "I love it. Yeah, don't let him kiss the logo. Like own it." He was all for it. And I was like, I respect that a whole lot more than like, well, we just didn't know what we were doing. Like if it's a rivalry and you really hate the other team, just be the bad guy, like it is what it
No,
is.
I would. Yeah, I believe a lot of Michigan fans would agree with that too. They would probably, if I had to guess, just speculation, rather hear Dusty May said, "Yeah, we just wanted to stir up some stuff. We don't like them. They
Yeah.
don't like us, and we wanted to interfere with their tradition there." I would respect him more. Not that I don't
Oh yeah.
respect Dusty May, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not
just in
saying that,
that
yeah, I'm
comment.
not saying I don't respect him after it, but it's just it's one of those things where it's like if you're gonna be the bad guy, be the
Be
bad
the
guy,
bad guy.
right? Own it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you there.
Philip says Dusty had to know about the tradition. It was just pettiness by young players. I mean, I agree with you. I'm doing my best to
100%.
try and be both sides here a little bit and try not to come off as an Ohio State fan because I can, and I was very much so like that. If you want to hear my Ohio State fan slant, go follow me on JR's underscore rankings and everything I tweeted about it today. But overall, like yeah, just if you're gonna do something like that, just own it. Just be the bad guy. So,
Agreed.
all right. Anything else on that before we go to our bracket, Frank?
No, and I want to compliment you on your recap. You did a really good job. That
Okay.
was yeah, all the
All right.
players, the names, the actions, the order, everything was spot on.
I appreciate it. I studied a little bit before I got on here. I was like, I want to make sure I get this right. Like, I don't want to come on here and sound like a doofus and not know what actually happened. So, I appreciate that. All right, everybody, we're gonna hit a commercial break really fast. We'll come back and we will talk about the Big Ten bracket. Frank and I together will go through and pick each and every game and tell you who's gonna win the Big Ten tournament. Okay, maybe not really actually who's gonna win, but who we think will win together. All right,
We'll
we'll be
give
right
our
back.
best guesses.
CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site, it's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level.
Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, use code HUDDLE HUDDLE on CBB Analytics for $30 off. That is code HUDDLE HUDDLE CBBAnalytics.com. I know Frank uses CBB Analytics. You love it, don't you, Frank?
Oh man, if I were to pull out my phone and open my tabs right now in my browser, I'd probably have at least 10 tabs of CVB Analytics open. Yes,
I
live
have to
there,
limit
use it
myself
all
to
the time.
one on my phone. I have to limit myself
Yeah.
to one.
Yeah, love the platform. Great stuff.
All
there.
right. Yeah, they do a great job. Also, like and subscribe. We appreciate it. We know, look, listen, we are getting closer and closer to after dark. It's basically after dark at this point outside my window. So we're there. Like, subscribe. We definitely appreciate all of that. All right. Let's do this bracket. So Frank and I are going to go through matchup by matchup, pick who we think is going to win each one until we get all the way to the championship. My team, Ohio State, is in the first part. Frank's team, Purdue, in the first bye. So we'll get to them relatively quickly. But Frank, I think we got to start with Northwestern and Minnesota. A really, really interesting matchup. Two teams, Ben Johnson has struggled a little bit this year, but he's also won games that he shouldn't have won. Northwestern has been without Brooks Barnheiser and Jalen Leach this year, but they still have Nick Martinelli, and they have some young guys who are really playing hard, doing a good job for them. It's not going to be an easy matchup for Wisconsin, whoever they play. I think they'll probably win, but this is still a game that has meaning for these two teams. Which way are you kind of leaning here?
I am leaning the Northwestern direction, only because Northwestern did beat Minnesota on the road just less than a month ago. And yes, the injuries have been tough for Northwestern, but I see the experience of Brooks Barnheiser. I'm sorry, not Brooks Barnheiser, Nick Martinelli, being the contributing factor. I mean, obviously, Minnesota does have some experience there. Dawson Garcia has been in college for what seems like 10 years now, but I see Northwestern as just the better team here, and the team that if these two teams played 100 times, they probably win 65. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to lean Northwestern, but open to hearing what you have to say and differing opinions.
Yeah, no, I probably slightly lean Northwestern as well. That was my thought going into this one. I do like Minnesota, and I do think that Minnesota has the really good player in Dawson Garcia, but I just think Nick Martinelli has been, I don't know if more consistent is the right word, but he's just seemed to make a bigger impact this season. I wonder if Minnesota has the better role players, and so that might, be a difference there. But if I'm betting on somebody, I'm probably betting on Chris Collins and Nick Martinelli together. I like Ben Johnson a lot. I like Dawson Garcia a lot. Lakai Patterson has come on, and he's done a good job. Frank Mitchell lately has been good down low as well. So I like this matchup a lot, but I think I need to go with the Big Ten leading scorer. Look at that. John just said it right as I was saying it. Big Ten leading scorer. That's Nick Martinelli in this one. So we'll throw them right there. All right. Next one, Iowa, Ohio State. I'll be honest, I'm leaning Ohio State. Maybe I'm voting with my heart here, Frank. You can be the judge. I think Ohio State has a good amount to play for here. They have the tournament bid. Iowa, that was a really impressive game against Nebraska with what they were able to do, but this is still an Iowa team that has kind of been struggling here at the end. They got that win that they needed to make it into the Big Ten tournament. But overall, Ohio State, they have the 3-point shooting. They have the firepower. They don't really have the rim protectors, but
like Iowa doesn't really have the guys down low to challenge that, right? Like they have pieces down low, but Sean Stewart and Aaron Bradshaw, although they're not the best fives in the Big Ten, they're still better than what Iowa has, in my opinion. So I'm gonna go with one of the best, in my opinion, shooting backcourts in the Big Ten with a struggling front court, but one that should be better.
Yeah, I'm leaning Ohio State as well. I feel like Iowa has a very high ceiling, but also a very low floor, and they tend to spend more time on the floor than they do the ceiling. And I think Ohio State's floor is much higher than Iowa's floor, and they have an equally as high ceiling. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to lean Ohio State. I just think that Iowa's ability to win this game is going to rely on them catching fire from three. And I mean, actually catching fire, like shooting something like 60% on high volume. And I just don't see that happening. I mean, maybe it'll happen, but I just, their firepower right now is purely from the perimeter, and Ohio State's got that inside presence. I have to lean Ohio State on this one.
Yeah, I do too. Which, by the way, if you guys are in the chat, feel free to throw in your team that you think is going to win as well. If we get an overwhelming amount of you saying somebody else, we might just go with that one if Frank and I are close enough at it. So be our tiebreakers if we need it. So we'll go there. I do want to, highlight a couple of comments really fast. Philip said, better coach Ben Johnson or Chris Collins? Closer than I want to admit. I think I go Chris Collins here.
Yeah.
Do you concur?
So do I. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is closer than I think some people realize.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Philip says, "Do you trust Diebler?" Yeah, Diebler is such a lightning rod topic now for Ohio State fans and everything. I
trust Diebler as an outsider. I love the guy. Yeah.
I love Diebler too. It's just, it's been hit or miss stuff here and there, and I don't love the offense they're running right now. I wish it was a little bit better, but at the end of the day, the thing I like about Diebler is not his X's and O's. It's how aggressive he gets his guys to play. His guys play very aggressive. They play with a chip on their shoulder, and I like that. Doesn't always work out for them. See the Indiana game, but they do play hard. So, and there we go. John says he thinks Ohio State will win. Drew our season. We're not at Michigan State yet. All right, hold your horses. All right, we'll get there. Just messing with you.
All right. In good time.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get there. Don't worry. You'll have your chance to pick Michigan State. All right, USC, Rutgers. Put it in the chat, guys. Which one you think is going to win between USC and Rutgers? Frank, I'll let you go first on this one.
And this is purely a gut thing, JR, but I'm leaning USC on this one. And I feel like again, it's a floor ceiling thing. We saw Rutgers go into Michigan and play really well. Yeah, that game went down to the wire. But I feel like USC, even though they have the worst record, in this case the worst seed, they have more experience. They're an older roster, and I just see that prevailing against a younger Rutgers team who is all over the place in terms of consistency.
Yeah, it's hard for me because that USC UCLA game left a really bad taste in my mouth. I think Eric Musselman is the better coach, and I think that USC is probably a better, well-rounded team. But Rutgers has the two best players on the court in that game. So, like, for me, it's really, really difficult. I see what you're saying about USC, but I almost lean more Rutgers just because of the two better players. And if you can get, a guy like Acuff, shooting well in that game, if you can get, some good rebounding from Somerville and some of the other guys in this game, like, I think Rutgers can pull this one out. And I mean, like I said, I didn't love the effort from USC in that game. Cloud and Wesley Yates were giving a lot of effort. Cloud, he did turn the ball over 6 times in that one. So I don't love that, but I'll be honest, I'm torn on this one.
Yeah, this one's almost the hardest in my opinion. Yeah. But if the Ace Bailey shows up to this game, who showed up today, yeah, it could be a long night for Rutgers. But you make some good points.
But do you think Rutgers would have like the better defensive intensity, right? Like if that happens, I'm betting on a better defensive intensity game from either USC or Rutgers. I just don't know if I've seen that defensive intensity consistently from USC this season that they could win in a game like that against Rutgers. Even though Steve Peichel doesn't have maybe exactly the guys that he would normally have on his team, I still think he can get these guys to put it together and play a better defensive game than USC does. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
and
don't know.
looking at USC's resume, I mean, wins at Illinois, over Michigan State. It's again, both of these teams are when they're up, and when they're down, they're really down. Um,
Yeah.
After talking this one over, I'm gonna have to vote Rutgers for
Okay.
simply for the fact that they do have the two most talented and athletic players on the court.
Okay, we've gotten varying comments. We've had Philip saying Rutgers, but just because he wants to see Rutgers move on, and then some people saying they don't trust Rutgers because they
Yeah.
rely on two players. So I think Frank and I are going to agree here and go Rutgers. But honestly, if you went USC, I wouldn't argue too much. So all right, moving on. Should we stay at the bottom and stay with Purdue, or should we go up to the top and do Indiana here, Frank?
Yeah, I like the snake pattern. So
Okay.
let's snake through it.
All right, let's stay on Rutgers. Rutgers keeps the momentum going. They got the win over USC. They face Purdue, who I mean they gave Purdue a good game for parts of that in the first half, and then Purdue just shot lights out. And I mean that's the threat of playing this Purdue team, right? Is at any point in time, and that's what I said when I talked about are they a Final Four caliber team. I was like, well, specifically Fletcher Lawyer, like if he gets hot and gets on it, like he can win you a game by himself in March Madness, a game you shouldn't win just with his shooting alone. Now, I'm not going to bet on that to happen, but it is a possibility. It's something you have to consider. I'm going to go with Purdue in this one. Just think better rounded team, even though Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper are really good. Braden Smith is a vet. TKR is just unstoppable down low. Even what was it last game when people were talking like, well, he kind of struggled. It's like well, the dude almost had 30 points. Like,
Yeah.
like he's a monster. He's so hard to stop. Braden Smith really is one of the best players in all of college basketball. In my opinion, the best point guard in college basketball this season. And I'm going to go with Purdue. I don't think I'm going to get too much arguing from you on that one, Frank.
No argument for me, and I think a lot of that has to do with Trey Kaufman, and twice now they've had they've shown they haven't been able to stop him. I think Purdue will draw a pretty decent crowd, being that it's about an hour away from Purdue's campus, which is totally not fair to Rutgers. But it was a closer game at Rutgers. The two teams did play twice, but yeah, I think Purdue walks away from this one by 8 to 13 points.
Yeah,
if I had to guess.
All right, let's go with Purdue. I think that's a pretty quick one. We know that one. All right. Ohio State, Illinois. It's really interesting because Ohio State, this is the same situation they seem to be in last year. If they get this win over Iowa, it'll be like last year where Illinois and Ohio State play, and Ohio State kind of has their NCAA tournament chances on the line. I think Ohio State has better NCAA tournament chances now than they did, but I also think this Illinois team is playing really good basketball right now, Frank. I think that they're just doing a really good job. I think that Brad Underwood has these guys going. However, there is the aspect of this team that which we saw a little bit against Purdue, which is this team can shoot themselves out of a game, but they can shoot themselves right back into it. So, what are we going to see from this Illinois team? Are we going to see consistent enough shooting? If they don't shoot the ball well, are they going to get the ball inside and do what they did a little bit more against Purdue with some of the cutting and stuff like that? I have to say Illinois is the more reliable team, so I'm going to go with Illinois, but I would not say an upset would be crazy here.
No, I wouldn't think it'd be crazy at all. And spoiler alert, I'll probably have to go with Illinois on this one. But, this is not by any means a 70-30 game, in my opinion. It's not your typical 7-10. This is probably closer to a 50-50 game, in my opinion, because, again, as you said, Illinois, they don't know a bad shot, right? They're able to hit contested threes, and they're also, like you said, they'll shoot themselves out of a game. But I think that Ohio State is a little bit more repeatable with a little bit less variance in terms of how they go to score. But, Illinois having a bad offensive outing is very, very possible. And Ohio State just at baseline can probably beat this Illinois team if that happens. But again, I think Illinois probably takes this one, but I think it's going to be a closer game than what a lot of people will think.
Yeah. Caitlin's right too. Merez could be back for this one. If Merez is back, that's
Really
huge
good
for
point.
them. Which, by the way, next game we get to Wisconsin, Northwestern. Max Klesmit is supposed to be back for that one, so that's an interesting one there. One last thing I want to say on this Ohio State Illinois game. I think you're right. I think it could be closer, but in my opinion, if Ohio State does end up pulling this one out, and this stings to say as an Ohio State fan, but if I'm just putting on my honest analysis hat, I think if Illinois ends up losing this game, it's going to be more because Illinois lost the game than it is Ohio State won it. Maybe Ohio State goes crazy shooting and they win the game that way, but I think this will. If Ohio State wins, which again I did not pick, but if that were to happen, it would probably be more because of Illinois losing it than it would be Ohio State winning it. That would be the likely
Agreed.
scenario to me. So, all right, Wisconsin, Northwestern. Didn't love what I saw from Wisconsin last game against Penn State. Now Penn State did go crazy shooting in that game. You know, over 50% from three, over 50% from the field overall. So they just had a really good shooting day. I shouldn't say just had a really good shooting day. Give credit to Penn State. They did a good job in that game. They played some good defense as well. But Max Klesmit is going to be back. I do wonder. You know, it was Wisconsin just kind of going through the motions in that game. If they were, I don't love that, but at the same time, I also kind of get it. I'm going Wisconsin here. I don't know if I love the upset pick of Northwestern over Wisconsin, but I guess I could see it happening. What are your thoughts here, Frank?
Yeah, I have to go Wisconsin. I mean, to me, it didn't look like Wisconsin was complacent in that game. I just think, you have to tip your cap to Penn State. Penn State's a better team than their record indicates. They've had a lot of losses within that 5 or fewer point range, but so that's not as bad of a lot. Even from a net standpoint, it's not as bad of a loss as what it initially sounds like. But I oftentimes I think when you lose your last game and you get reminded of your own mortality, that's sometimes a good thing. It just depends on how the players respond. Wisconsin's been hot down the stretch, and I think that kind of brief reminder of, hey, you don't bring it every night. You can lose to anyone is going to just kind of have those guys in the right mindset. Again,
Yeah.
None of these upsets would surprise me, but I think Wisconsin probably walks away from this one with a fairly easy win.
Yeah, I would say, and I just thought about this. You tell me what you think. I think Penn State this season is kind of like the inverse of Michigan, right? There's been so many close games, and Michigan has come out on top. Penn State, not as many close games, but still a good amount of them. And it just seems like every single time they come out on the losing end, it's been interesting.
Yeah, they've been on the wrong side of several coin flips this season, where Michigan's been on the right side of a few of them. And if the coin lands differently a few more times, this is a team that could easily be within the top 10 seeds. So that's just a loss to Penn State is not nearly as bad as what it sounds.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll move Wisconsin on here. Let me find their logo. There it is. All right, Frank, our only upset we have so far is Northwestern over Minnesota, 13-12. So, I mean, an upset's going to happen here at some point. Indiana, the 9 seed, going up against Oregon, the 8 seed. I mean, I don't know if I can pick this, but Indiana is playing good basketball right now. That win over Ohio State, I will say, Assembly Hall obviously was a big deal there. How much they were playing for their coach, Mike Woodson. Oregon, I mean, as much as Nate Biddle did look great in that game still went to overtime against Washington. It was a rivalry game, so I think you need to take that into account. But, Oregon didn't necessarily look fantastic coming down the stretch. They get the win, and Indiana and Oregon did just recently play. Oregon won by, what was it, 10 in that game?
Nice by 9, yeah.
9 in that game. But I think they kind of pulled away there at the end. It was a closer game than I think 9 points indicate there at the end. My head says to pick Oregon, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me living in the state of Indiana, Frank, but I'm kind of leaning Indiana here.
Yeah, I mean, and I spend a lot of time in Indiana, so I get a lot of it as well. I'm this one's tough, and this is one I had circled, metaphorically speaking, knowing this one was going to be tough. The two teams did just play. They're both really hot. Mike Woodson had some words for the officials after the game too, and just the free throw disparity. A lot of people thought that game wasn't officiated properly, but it's been mentioned in the comments too. I'm glad someone said it, but does Jackson Shelstead show up? That's a mouthful. I think that's the key to determining a lot of how this game goes, because he's that kind of X factor for Oregon, and they seem to. I mean, yeah, Nate Biddle is the guy right now, but they seem to kind of go as Jackson Shelstead sort of coerces them. So I think that's going to be a major factor here. Um, they've both teams have that big inside presence. Indiana has Ballo. This one's tough, but I'm just gonna let a little bit of my bias shine through here, and I'm gonna lean Oregon, but it's a 55-45 on this one.
All right, that means we got to go to the comments and see what the people are saying.
Agreed. Yeah,
That we got to see what you guys think. Mish says Ballo could slow down Biddle. I mean, he did a pretty good job of getting physical with him in that game, and I
he
think
did.
one of the factors was Mike Woodson played Ballo and Renew too much together. I wonder if he learns from that. I wonder if maybe he corrects that. But at the same time, he was talking about how physical of a game it was. So maybe he wants, maybe he wants to do that more. I'm not sure. Caitlin says Indiana over Oregon. Philip says Indiana wins and Woodson gets a contract extension. I think the first part of that is much more likely than the second part there, Philip.
Yeah, yeah.
But and John is saying Indiana. We're not getting hosed by Oregon refs this time. I guess we have to go Indiana. The people have spoken here, Frank.
The people have spoken. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So all right, we will go with Indiana against Frank's pick, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This does lead us to a very fun conversation here, though, because Michigan State, who has looked fantastic, they face Indiana, who was the only team to beat them in the Breslin Center this year. Has Michigan State figured out the zone well enough to be able to beat Indiana this time? I do think Anthony Leal is going to be a big part of this game with, helping guard that backcourt of Michigan State. I think Trey Galloway had played some good defense as well. I think it's going to be interesting what Mackenzie Mbako does in this game. You're going to need a good game from Mackenzie Mbako if you want to take down a team like Michigan State. I think you can rely on Umar Ballo. I think you can rely on a Malik Renew giving you good games. Maybe not going off and having anything crazy, but I think they're going to give you good games. For me here, it's the defense of the backcourt and Mackenzie Mbako game. This is not a game where he can score 8 points and go, 2 from 9 from 3. I'm not saying he's done that recently. I'm just, pulling numbers out saying he can't have a bad shooting day from 3, and he can't settle for those jump shots if they're not falling at the beginning of the game. I think Michigan State probably wins here. I'm going to go with that, but it would not be crazy in my mind if Indiana won.
No, it wouldn't be crazy at all. And I am leaning Michigan State on this one, but again, this is probably one that's a lot closer than what a lot of people will think. I think that Indiana probably should come out and show that zone look again. If there's one way to, defend Michigan State, it's to dare them to beat you from behind the arc. And they did that and it worked. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Indiana upset Michigan State. In fact, I'd probably be a little happy to see it just on a personal level. But all that being said, I think Michigan State is the better team, the more disciplined team, the more consistent team. And I for that reason, I'm probably going to have to choose them as my pick.
Yeah, yeah.
But the comments are very split, though. A lot of Indiana I'm seeing there.
It's a good thing you and I agree, because I don't know if we could go to the comments here. We got Mish saying, give me Indiana. John, our Indiana fan, says Michigan State is going to get their revenge this time. Mish does say nobody on MSU can guard Ballo. I think Cooper will give him a good chance there, but Cooper a little bit thinner. I think Ballo could kind of throw his weight around down there. And, man, he's such a good passer out of double teams, too. It's really hard to defend Ballo when he gets down there. Philip says
another mention of a contract extension too. So it's popping up everywhere. Maybe it'll happen.
Maybe it will. Indiana stuns MSU. Terrible matchup for MSU. And Philip says again, Woodson gets the contract. If he didn't get the contract extension the first time, he's getting it after this one for sure. So, and Caitlin says Michigan State. We're gonna have to go with Michigan State here. Frank and I agree on that one, but. I mean, I'll tell you, after that win that Indiana had before, it wouldn't be crazy to me if they get it again. So, all right, Frank, Wisconsin, UCLA. I have thoughts here. I'll give one thought first, and then I'll let you go with yours, and then I'll give my second thought. My first thought here is if Wisconsin does, in fact, beat Northwestern, whoever they beat in the first one, I don't discount that Wisconsin getting a chance to play a game shooting on these rims is going to be really beneficial for them. I think they could come out in this UCLA game pretty hot and get on a good shooting streak there from the beginning. Can they hold it for the entire game? We'll see, but I think that's going to matter for a team like Wisconsin with how much they shoot.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think Wisconsin. I mean, they there's not a single maybe one person on Wisconsin who you don't want shooting if you are Wisconsin. Yeah, but I think with depending, I'm not sure what ball they use and what ball is going to be used in the Big Ten tournament, but that's also something that matters. But I think that Wisconsin's going to have that advantage. I think they're going to be able to spread out UCLA, and actually, this is one that I think Wisconsin actually walks away with a pretty convincing win, in my opinion. It's not that I'm not sold on this UCLA team. It's just that they're not exciting. They don't bring the physicality, and honestly, I'm just not a huge fan of Mick Cronin. So there's probably a little bit of bias there, but I think this is one that Wisconsin walks away with, in my opinion.
So what you're saying is if Woodson doesn't get the contract extension, you want Indiana to hire Mick Cronin, is what you're saying.
It would be very fitting, yeah, if they did, yeah. But truthfully, the guy I don't want to see there is Chris Beard, because him and Painter already have a little bit of a history, but it would be fitting for that reason as well too. So.
How long ago was that when they had that? I had forgotten.
I mean, so they Painter kind of did the springboard for his career when he was at Little Rock, when he upset Purdue, and then they had. It wasn't necessarily between the two of them, but he had a lot of strong words about the officiating and with Texas in the second round of the tournament. And, how does one guy shoot 20 free throws, but they did choose to guard Zach Edey one-on-one, which, I mean, who not many people could defend him one-on-one. So that'd be my pick for fun. But yeah, I see Wisconsin coming away with this game.
I do too, and my secondary thought supports it as well. I listen to Mick Cronin. Well, I always listen to Mick Cronin's press conferences. If you ever just want a good time listening to a coach,
they're great.
Chaotic and crazy. It's Mick Cronin, and he does a great job with that. But in the press conference, he was kind of going on and on about how UCLA doesn't care about Big Ten tournament championships. Like he was just saying, kind of going out of his way to be like, yeah, I don't really care about banners from a Big Ten tournament championship. We don't hang those in Poly. Like we're getting ready for the NCAA tournament. So I don't know. Maybe he's just playing some mental mind games to mess with the other teams. But I mean, if you don't care, I think there are teams that do care. Evidence of Wisconsin last year, they cared a lot, and I think they're going to care a lot again this year. So the team that cares, I'll take over the team that doesn't care. Especially when the team that cares, I think, is probably more talented offensively. So I'm going to take Wisconsin in this one.
Yeah, and he's not the first coach I've heard say something like that too. And I think it all depends on, what do you have to lose and what do you have to gain, from your conference tournament championship. But usually they say that after the fact, not beforehand. So that's a bold statement. I wasn't aware of that, JR. Glad you told me that.
Go listen to his UCLA post game. He kind of went on and on a lot about it. It was rather interesting. All right, most people saying Wisconsin over UCLA. Philip, John, Mish actually changed his pick. He says UCLA's offense sucks. It's definitely not an offense that has like that go-to guy in it. It's much more of kind of an offense that's put together. Daly, Clark, Bilodeau. But you don't have Johnny. What was his last name? Juzang.
Yeah, Juzang.
You don't have. It's not like that anymore. Like they run a different kind of offense. So, I think we seem to be in consensus here. Wisconsin over UCLA. All right, Frank. Interesting matchup here. Illinois and Maryland. These are two teams that are very interesting to me because I think these two teams at kind of full strength, highest ceiling, could give us one of the best games in all of college basketball this year. Maryland, they obviously have their Crab Five. They don't really get much production from their bench, but their Crab Five, those starting five, they're really, really good together. I do wonder if Illinois can just go to the basket a little bit more and get a Julian Reese or a Derek Queen in foul trouble. How much would that do in this game to make a Jordan Geronimo or somebody else have to come in and play the four for him? Like, I do wonder how much that would impact it, but Illinois just seems so content with shooting 30 or more threes a game that I don't I don't think they're going to make that a huge part of their game. And I get why Brad Underwood does it. Like, it provides spacing for him and everything else. But there's some games where I just think you need to go inside and really just try to get free throws. And I don't know. Maybe that's what they need to do in this one. I'm not sure. I'm having a hard time picking this one, Frank. What do you think?
Yeah. So, when these teams played in the regular season, it was a blowout, for Maryland. And
Hmm.
I've said this multiple years in a row now about Illinois. I'm not knocking on Brad Underwood, not knocking on Illinois before I say this, but the offense they run is very simple. It's effective, but it's very simple, and they don't make the defense work a ton. I mean, it seems like Brad Underwood's favorite play is ball screen contested three. I mean, I imagine that's what it has to be called. It's just like a ball screen, two guys in the corner, one guy on the slot, and then like KJ tries to drive it and then steps back, and like half the time it goes in. So like you can't fault it. But I think with as good of a team as Maryland is, and as efficient as they are defensively, they're currently ninth in KenPom. They force a ton of turnovers, and they have the athletes and the bodies to throw at you and make life difficult. I think they're going to have to force Illinois to do something a little bit differently, and maybe that is get the ball inside. I would love to see something creative from Illinois in terms of how to counter that. Now the question is can Maryland hang offensively if it turns into a shooting match? I love Derek Queen. I think he's one of the most entertaining players to watch this season. His basketball IQ is incredibly high, but I see this game going Maryland's way for the reasons I mentioned. But how are you leaning on this one?
Yeah, like I said, I have a hard time. I think Maryland, it is a disadvantage with pretty much only 5 players. But at the same time, like, they've done a really good job of winning so far this season without them. I do kind of place that Illinois Maryland game from before out of my mind a little bit. Avicic wasn't in that game. So, I mean, there are things you need to take from that game. But also at the same time, like, Will Riley has really come on for this Illinois team. And, with him coming along lately, is he going to be a piece that really helps this team get over the hump in some ways offensively? I said Will Riley just needs to be the third option scoring on this team. Well, since I said that, he's been the third option or more pretty much every single game. So, honestly, like, I'm gonna go ahead and just agree with you here, Maryland, just because they've been the more consistent team throughout the season. But at the end of the day, like, if Illinois wins this one, I'm not gonna be surprised at all, because I do think this Illinois team is one of the highest ceilings in the Big Ten, and
Agreed.
this is a team that, if they put it all together and they are cutting and they are getting the other team in foul trouble and they're just putting everything that this offense can be together because of their athleticism, because of their talent, they can beat anybody in the nation. Yes, Caitlin, I hear you, haters.
Hey,
I hear you.
yeah,
But like I said,
no hate
there's a
from me.
lot of things to like about this Illinois team. I just think Maryland's been the more consistent team throughout the season, so I got to go with Maryland.
And just factually, Illinois has struggled against good defensive teams. I mean, yeah, they had the 2-point heartbreaker loss against Tennessee, but Tennessee had a ton of foul trouble in that game. Their bench players were in. I mean, we all know what happened against Duke, Michigan State. When you look at when they've played really good defensive teams, it just hasn't gone their way. And that was a criticism I had this time last year on the show going into the tournament, is what happens when they run into a buzzsaw of a defense. And we all saw what happened in the tournament. So I know Brad Underwood's learned from that, and I'll just be curious to see how this game goes. This is a game I'm really excited to watch, assuming that it does happen.
Yeah, same here too. Yeah, I just, like I said, they gotta get Maryland in foul trouble. They cannot just be, shooting 35, 43s in this game. They got to get Maryland in foul trouble more. So, all right, there we go. Philip, I was expecting that at some point. It says Illinois wins because Willard sucks. I was expecting that at some point from you, Philip. All right, we got to get moving here. I got another show to do in about five minutes. If we go a little bit over, it's okay. But all right, Purdue and Michigan. Obviously, these two teams faced off before. Purdue blew them out on their home court. Michigan won barely on their court. I think that at that time, Michigan was playing some of their best ball of the season. Michigan has started regressing now. Purdue has ended the season, maybe not on the best note that they wanted, but they still did get a couple good wins. They were able to beat UCLA there, so it's not like all hope is lost or anything like that by any means. This is still a team that is probably going to have 2 All-Americans on their team with Braden Smith, Fletcher, and TKR. So, like, this Purdue team, I think, is probably going to win this game. I feel more comfortable without that, just with the way Michigan has looked all season long and what Purdue was able to show at home. But also, like, does Purdue benefit from shooting on these rims beforehand, kind of like we talked about with Wisconsin? Is that going to benefit them there? They get to a little bit of a bigger lead, and also to a team that turns it over this much in Michigan. I just think Braden Smith is probably going to have a field day with poking some
Yeah,
of
I
those
mean, and
balls and get some of those steals.
that was the big storyline, the first matchup. And my analysis of this one's going to be simple. Like I can't get too into this one because I'm obviously a bleed black and gold here, but Purdue won by 30-ish at Mackey, and then controlled the game for the majority of the time at Chrysler Center, and kind of just gave that game away there at the end. And for that reason, I think on a neutral floor, Purdue's going to come away with the win. Just Purdue hasn't had any issues in 2 matchups now with those 4 or 5 ball screens. In fact, Trey Kaufman-Renn had some interesting words to say about him. I don't know why other teams have struggled with him, is what he said, which I thought was pretty interesting there. I don't know why you say that, but yeah, for this one, I think Purdue probably walks away with the win just from the experience in playing them twice already and having. I mean, yeah, you lose to them a second time, but being in control of that game for the majority of the time, I think Purdue will walk away with the win with this one.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, Michigan's just not been playing good basketball lately. Although Purdue has not been, winning every single game, I still feel like there's games they lost that they were still playing good basketball, and I think that matters. So, all right, let's stick with Purdue here. Purdue and Maryland. Purdue comes into this one obviously if they're hot, winning 2 games in a row. That's going to be interesting. Maryland just coming off of 1 win. They'll have a little bit of a game under them, but they'll have some more rests. Does that impact much into it? I do wonder with Braden Smith basically playing 40 minutes a game, pretty much every single game. Like, is he going to be tired legs at this point? I think that's one of the portions of the NCAA tournament that benefits him, that it's not like game to game to game. There's 2 games in a 2-day period or sometimes a 3-day period. And so you kind of get some rest there. But in this one, I mean, it's back to back to back days. I do wonder how much that is going to impact him. But at the same time, you got Maryland who they go so hard with those 5 players.
Yeah, they do.
Only 1 game before, though. I think that benefits them. I'm kind of leaning Maryland here, Frank, but I'm willing to hear you out on if you think Purdue.
So I think that Purdue did play Maryland this season. That Purdue got the win at Mackey. Both teams are very different now. Your point about Braden Smith and playing 40 minutes. Matt Painter says, like, my practices are far more intense than a game. So, like, Braden Smith's fine. I'm not sure I buy that, JR. I'm really not sure that I do.
I was just pondering it more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, is
it going to be a deal? Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm saying I'm not sure I buy it from Painter. I think
gotcha. Okay.
Braden Smith experiences a little bit of fatigue. This one's tough, and I'm probably going to have to go with Maryland on this one, just because Maryland forcing turnovers, Purdue struggling against turnovers. I just think that this is a game that I just don't see Purdue beating Maryland the second time. There's some comments here about, if Purdue has to face any good big man in the tourney, they're screwed. I mean, Purdue's had a lot of success against some good big men. Just look at the first game against Michigan there. But I just don't see Purdue handling Maryland a second time. Just both teams are very different now. There's a lot more tape in terms of how to attack Purdue. I think that was when Purdue was kind of going to their no middle post trap, was right when that Maryland game happened. I think it caught them by surprise. Derek Queen's insane to watch. I just see Maryland walking away with this one.
Yeah. I think I agree here too. We'll go with Maryland, but wouldn't be surprised if Purdue pulls it out. If
neither would I.
Get 2 wins there, that'd be really impressive for Purdue. So, all right. Michigan State, Wisconsin. I think this would be one of the most fun matchups, that we see in the Big Ten tournament. If we get it, it was fun seeing Michigan State and Wisconsin that last time. Michigan State's defense really gave Wisconsin a hard time. Could they do the same thing with them again? I mean, if Wisconsin, kind of like I talked about with Ohio State, like they get hot shooting, they can beat pretty much anybody. I mean, you saw it against Purdue. Like they just shot the lights out of that game. There was nothing really they could do about it. So does Wisconsin do that against Michigan State? I don't think Michigan State can keep up in a 3-for-3 game. Michigan State's been shooting the ball better at times this year, but they can't keep up with Wisconsin if Wisconsin is going to shoot really well. So I got to be honest, I'm kind of leaning Wisconsin here, but the defense does give me some concerns, and maybe Michigan State pulls it out. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, so you look at on paper, Michigan State is fifth in KenPom in overall defense, but they're third in the country in terms of opponent 3-point percentage. And I mean that's how Wisconsin looks to attack you, right? So it's the immovable object against the unstoppable force, and what will prevail. I kind of see Wisconsin coming out with this away with this one. I think their ability to stretch out and spread out Michigan State, because you have to respect their shooting ability, and then Tanjay's ability to slash to the basket, Blackwell's ability to slash to the basket, I think will cause Michigan State some problems. And like you said, the kind of 3-for-2. I can see this game kind of getting into a bit of a shooting match, despite the defensive numbers from Michigan State. But I think that if these two teams played 100 times, Wisconsin probably wins 65 of them. So for that reason, I'm gonna lean Wisconsin a little bit. I think you might be on.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I wasn't too crazy leaning Wisconsin here. So you know what? Michigan State, you had your time to shine. Good for you. You know, you had your time, but it's Wisconsin's time. How much are we being influenced by Wisconsin's run last year too? Are we being influenced too much by that?
No, I'm trying not to be, at least. I
Yeah.
just I'm not hating on Michigan State. I just see Wisconsin pulling this one out. But
Yeah,
this will be
yeah.
this. I'm so excited for this next week. It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be so good. And if we get this matchup in the Big Ten tournament championship, it will be another really fun one. Wisconsin and Maryland. I don't know how much we have to break down here. Let's just kind of go with gut feelings here, Frank. All right, gut feeling, first reaction. You think about the 5 men from Maryland. You think about the shooting and maybe some struggles with defense, but defense has gone better. John Tanji is an All-American. John Blackwell is kind of the Robin to his Batman. That down low presence of Julian Reese and Derek Queen. What's your gut reaction here between Maryland and Wisconsin?
If I just close my eyes and jump, Maryland.
Yeah.
That's my gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I get a sense you maybe agree.
I do. I do.
Okay, yeah, fascinating. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Maryland. I do wonder if the rest helps them. I was also the guy though that was on here, kind of giving Kevin Willard a hard time in his past 2 seasons at Maryland. So it feels crazy to me to be picking him now, but I just think Kevin Willard, even if he doesn't coach the game well, he's just done such a good job putting the starting lineup of Maryland together. If they had a bench, this would probably be the Big Ten champions, I think, if they had a bench this season. But they don't, and Michigan State gets the Big Ten championship. But yeah, this is gonna be crazy.
Just want to comment on Jeff's comment here. I'm not hating on Michigan State. I'm just saying on a neutral court, I think Wisconsin would beat Michigan State 65 out of 100 times. At the Breslin Center, totally different. But I think on a neutral floor, it's purely a play style thing. Their offense is kind of the kryptonite, and that's just the way I see it. But not hating on Michigan State, it's purely a stylistic thing.
Yeah, we get accused of being haters here every now and then, and you
Yeah.
know what? It's the price we pay for coming on a Big Ten podcast.
Yeah,
and
absolutely,
talking
yeah.
all Big Ten hoops. So Jeff,
Everything we
appreciate you
say
being
is
here.
etched in stone. You can come back and reference it. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? But you can also do what Kent did, which is take his take and go to Twitter with it like he did.
I saw
this
that,
morning.
yeah. But honestly, what Russ needs to do, Russ from our group,
Yeah.
he predicted Steve Peichel and Rutgers not having a great season, and he got a lot of hate for that on the show. So
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
good on Russ for being able to see that before the season even started.
I was wondering if he was going to bring that up because he said that, and he was exactly right about it. I was wondering. I did give him a little bit of a hard time with the alphabetical part, but he did make
Yeah.
some valid points as well. So it
Yeah,
was.
no, he hasn't forgotten. I promise you that.
Love it. All right. Well, tell us where we can hear you and Russ and all your other guys at there, Frank.
Yeah, Twitter at Boiler Express _. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on all sorts of different platforms. Some that I'm not even aware of. We just push them to the cloud, and the cloud takes care of it from there. So anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you can find us there. Boiler Express Podcasts. Come on in. You can hear our wild and crazy Purdue bias takes. But I appreciate being on tonight, JR, and it's always a blast.
It's always a blast, and they do a great job over at Boiler Express, Russ and Frank, and They got this guy Dylan DK over there. He's pretty crazy. He picks Purdue to win every single game, but you know what? He's biased and he's not backing down from it. So there you go.
I admire how passionate he is.
There you go. All right, everybody. We really appreciate you being here. I'm going to hop off here and head straight over to the football channel to do my Sunday night show with Zach. We're going to be talking about one question for every single Big Ten team in spring football this year. We also got some news and notes that we're going to kind of rapid fire through, and we're going to have a great time over there. So thank you so much for joining us on Big Ten After Dark. I'll see you over on the Big Ten Huddle football channel right after this. Have a good one.